As we said earlier, a sure way to damage rapport is to do all the talking. We want to build rapport and find out more about our stakeholders so that we can work together toward an outcome which ideally all parties find acceptable. Asking questions sounds simple, but there's more to it than we might think. In my experience, a lot of people think that influencing is about telling the other party what they want or need the other person to do. Certainly, it's important to make a strong case for what you need people to do in order to achieve your business objective. But a key skill of effective influencers is the ability to ask insightful questions. Before we go further, let me ask you a question. Why do you think questioning can help us to influence? Think about this for a moment. Well, you've probably come up with all sorts of good ideas about the value of questioning. Questioning gets the other person to think their way to solutions. It helps to learn about the other person's key needs and issues. It helps build a positive relationship. Some of your thoughts may have included things such as questioning invites people to do some thinking for themselves. It helps them to think their way through issues and ideas for solutions. Often we can gain insights from their ideas on how to proceed through asking questions and end up coming up with an even better outcome because we've explored it together. Another benefit of questioning is that it provides a deeper understanding of the individuals you're trying to influence. By questioning, you can find out what's important to them. Questions such as, how do you feel about this? Or, what are the things you view as most important? And follow up with a, why do you feel that way? Of course, questioning done right helps us build positive business relationships because it shows we're interested in the other party. So how can we ensure we're asking questions while trying to influence? To illustrate the value of questioning, let's start by playing a game. Let's play a quick game. In this game, I'm going to try to find out what city in the world you would most like to visit. I have only 5 questions to find this out, and I can't ask you the obvious question of what city would you most like to visit. Other than that, I can ask any question I like. Now, of course, we can't make this interactive in an online course. But when I do ask a question, think about the answer you might provide based on the question asked. So here goes. What country is the city in? Is it a large city? Is it safe? Is the city a modern city? Would you get there by car, train, or plane? Okay, through these questions, I would have some information. But I think you'd agree, not a lot. I probably would not have been successful getting to the city you chose. I know just about everyone has heard about closed and open questions. As a quick refresh, closed questions are those questions we ask to find out something specific. So if we go back to our game for a moment, every question I asked was closed. The answer would provide very specific information without any depth. Closed-ended questions are great, but we tend to ask more of these than open questions. The problem with asking too many closed questions, as I did in the game, is that the person answering them doesn't have to think too much. Usually, all they have to do is provide a yes or no answer, or a specific piece of information. Open questions, on the other hand, help you to gain insights from the other person. They get the other person to share more information, and importantly, they also get the other person to think. Let's go back to our game again and think about some open questions I could have asked to find out your favorite city. Examples could include, why does this city appeal to you so much? What are some of the points of interest? Describe what you know about the city. How would you describe the city? What are some of the things that make the city special? As you can see from these questions, the answers you would get would be more detailed. More open questions help us to have a conversation with the other person. Although just because I asked more open questions doesn't guarantee I will have all the answers I need to guess your favorite city. Of course, with any type of questioning, we need to have rapport before we start to ask questions. Otherwise, it won't matter how good your questions are. The other person simply may not open up. Let's go back to our scenario and think about the types of questions which Tom could ask during the meeting. Once you've established rapport and set up the meeting using our what, because, how outcome, what sort of questions could you ask? Let's go back to our scenario. What sort of questions could you ask Jen and Dawn during your meeting? Here are just a couple of examples. As you can see, these questions start with words like are, is, do, does, when. These questions start with why, how, describe, what. These are just some examples. There are many more questions you can ask, but this gives you an indication of how you can open up the conversation with your stakeholders and get them thinking and sharing their point of view. Of course, the questions you ask will be determined by the answers you receive, but planning questions ahead of time tends to make us feel more comfortable going into a meeting. And of course, your questions will likely be a combination of closed and open questions. Now, why don't you reflect on your influence scenario and write out some questions you could ask? Go back to your objective and ask yourself, what questions could I ask that would provide greater information to help me to achieve my objective? I'd like to leave you with this message. Don't take questioning for granted. Plan your questions before you meet with your stakeholders. You may not need to ask them all, but you will feel more confident and most likely get better outcomes from each discussion. The next component of our planning is the make a persuasive case. As we said earlier, it's vital that we build a strong case for our ideas, recommendations, and proposals. We need to know how to construct messages which persuade our stakeholders. We persuade all the time in our professional and personal lives. So what is persuasion? Persuasion is the ability to get others to see things from your point of view, to help them appreciate the value of something for them. Let's look at a simple, fictitious example of one from our personal lives. Imagine that you and your partner or friend are planning a big night out at a restaurant. You want to go to one particular restaurant, while they want to go to a different one. You want to influence your partner or friend to go to your preferred restaurant. It could sound something like this. I really want to go to the new restaurant around the corner. I think the food is supposed to be really good. Why don't we give it a try, and we can try your preferred restaurant next time? Or, if you wish to be more persuasive, then it may sound like this. I think we should try the new restaurant around the corner. It has some interesting items on the menu which we could share, allowing us to enjoy a much wider range of dishes. I've read some reviews about the restaurant, and they are glowing, saying the restaurant appeals to many different food interests. And next time, we can try your preferred restaurant. So what did we do in example 2 which we didn't do in example 1? What we have done is included the strong verbal elements of persuasion into our statement. The strong elements of persuasion are as follows. We need to make a statement describing our recommendation or our idea, provide a benefit to the other person of our idea, and finally support the benefit with evidence to illustrate that what we're saying is correct. Let's go back to the earlier everyday example and repeat it again, clearly showing where each piece of the persuasion elements fits in. I think we should try the new restaurant around the corner for our big night out. It has some interesting items on the menu which we could share, allowing us to enjoy a wider range of dishes. I've read some reviews about this restaurant, and they're glowing, saying the restaurant appeals to many different food interests. And next time we can try your restaurant. Of course, this doesn't mean you have to provide benefits and evidence for every statement you make. You could provide a series of statements and then wrap up the statements with a strong supporting benefit and evidence. So our structure for creating more persuasion is simply as follows. My idea, my recommendation, or a feature or description of something. Benefit. What does this allow the stakeholder to have, or to become, or to feel, or to think? Basically, what is in it for them? Evidence. Evidence are those things that support the benefit of the idea, recommendation, etc. When communicating your message to your stakeholder, you can change the order of the three elements as you wish. You may want to start with some evidence, follow this by your statement, and finish with the benefit. As long as all three elements are part of your message, you enhance your likelihood of persuading your stakeholder. So there you have it, simple and effective. Now, let's go back to our scenario for a moment. Imagine we're trying to convince our two key stakeholders to allow us to utilize resources from their team to deliver the project. Message number 1, not persuasive. Jen and Dawn, what I really would appreciate is if you would give me access to work with a member from each of your teams on an ongoing basis over the course of the project. This will provide the subject matter expertise I need to get the project underway and deliver on the timeline given to me for the completion of the project. So let me ask you, if you were Jen or Dawn, would you be convinced to release some time for a member of your team to be involved, particularly as we know both Jen and Dom's departments are very busy? It seems that Tom's request is more about what he needs rather than what is important to Jen or Dawn. So to be persuasive, Tom needs to appeal to his stakeholders' needs and interests and provide appealing evidence to them. Let's try the same message again. Message number 2, persuasive. Jen and Dawn, I'd like to ask you to provide access to a team member from each of your departments to help with the implementation of the project. The allocation of 2 team members will provide the necessary skill to help us deliver the project on time, ensuring we get the efficiencies which the audit indicated weren't currently present. This will save time and also help us to minimize additional costs to the business through the existing inefficiencies. I've worked on similar projects to this one before, and what became very clear is by having the subject matter expertise involved early, the timeline of the projects was impacted. We actually saw that involving this type of expertise early on reduced the timeline of the project from start to finish by about 35%. So what do you think? Does this sound more convincing than example number 1? Let's have a look at what we need to think about in order for our messages to be convincing to the other person. First, go back to your stakeholder. That's where we start. Think about their communication style. Their communication style will signal what type of evidence is most likely going to convince them. For example, if they are analytical, they're likely to find statistics and data and even a convincing case study influential. If they are our amiable friends, they will likely find testimonials and examples and analogies more persuasive. Expressives, who are big picture people, will be motivated by hypothetical examples, stories, and analogies. Drivers will want facts and data illustrating the result. Secondly, reflect on their needs and wants. This will help you to position the benefit in a way that appeals to their needs and wants, which you discussed earlier in the program. Now, let's go back to the planning tool and craft 2 or 3 statements you would need to make in order to achieve your objective with your stakeholder group. Second, think back to your objective. What do you want your stakeholders to think, feel, and ultimately do as a result of the discussion? Then ask yourself, what key messages would help me to achieve the objective? There's something else I would like to discuss at this point of the program. Assertion. Sometimes, even though we have tried to persuade a stakeholder to see the benefit of our idea and embrace it, they still haven't. Of course, there could be many reasons for this. What is the difference between persuasion and assertion? Well, we know that persuasion is the ability to get others to see things from your point of view, to help them appreciate the value of something for them. Assertion, on the other hand, is the ability to gain compliance from another person. When asserting ourselves, we state our point of view in a clear and direct way, while still respecting the other person. So when would you need to be assertive? Well, for example, imagine you're working in a manufacturing plant, and someone does not adhere to the safety regulations, which could put them and others at risk. You aren't trying to persuade them to your idea of being compliant. You need them to do the right thing now, so that they and no one around them gets hurt. We assert ourselves when something vital must be done and isn't being done. when people simply must comply. But please don't mistake assertion for aggression. There's no place for aggression when we're influencing others. Equally, we don't want to be too passive about an issue, particularly when it's something that must be stood up for. Let's look at a couple of examples from everyday life to illustrate the difference between aggressive, passive, and assertive behavior. Scenario number 1. You suffer from asthma, and you're sitting in a small room where there is a no smoking sign clearly displayed. A man lights up a cigarette, even though he sees the sign. The smoke will trigger your asthma. What do? Aggressive response. Hey, read the sign, Dumbo, and butt out. Passive response. Say nothing. Let the person continue smoking even though it affects your asthma. Assertive response. Sir, as you can see, there is a no smoking sign, so please be considerate and put your cigarette out. Assertion also helps you to stand up for your rights. For example, Scenario 2. You're in a meeting when one of your colleagues, who always interrupts you and others, speaks over you in the middle of your response. Aggressive response. Hey, shut up, I'm speaking. Passive response. You say nothing and let your colleague interrupt you. Assertive response. Would you mind waiting to contribute until after I speak? Happy to hear your thoughts then. As you can see from the two scenarios, there is no room for aggression in successful influence, because great influence focuses on developing strong business relationships, and aggression disregards the relationship. Equally, there's no place for passive behavior, as this can mean we never achieve what we need to. We're always deferring to the needs of others at our own expense, and potentially the expense of the business. Assertion is the middle ground and is necessary when we need to stand up for what we know to be right. Assertion can get a bad rap. People often think it can be viewed as disrespectful and think they cannot assert themselves, particularly with someone of greater seniority in the organization. If done respectfully, assertion does not mean you're jeopardizing the relationship. Assertion does not blame anyone. In fact, you may even gain greater respect from others as you stand up for what is right and what must be done. Let's look at a simple approach to assertion known as empathetic assertion. Empathetic assertion is when we recognize the other person's situation or feelings and at the same time our own rights. Let's look at an example when you might use empathetic assertion. Imagine that you have tried to persuade someone to get important research data for a project to you on time, and still they're continually late delivering the data. This happens month after month. The project's success depends on this data for decision-making, and it's costing the business money each time there's a delay. So how could your empathetic assertion response sound in a situation like this? Recognition of their situation. I can appreciate you're very busy with many other projects demanding your time. Stating your own rights and needs. And as senior management count on me to get reports to them on time, I need you to find a way to get your data to me on time from now on. So persuasion and assertion, both are used in different situations. Both are necessary influence skills. Think about a situation in your own business life where you need to use assertion as a communication technique to gain necessary action. So we're very nearly at the end of our program with just 2 more things to discuss. We'll do these in Module 4.